The sun was just peeking over the horizon when a low, rumbling noise jolted me awake. At first, I thought it was part of a dream, the deep growl of heavy machinery vibrating through my house. But as the sound of grinding metal and beeping trucks wormed its way into my groggy mind, I realized this was no dream. With a groan, I dragged myself out of bed, rubbing sleep from my eyes as I stumbled to the window. My coffee was halfway to my lips when I froze. My driveway, my pristine, freshly sealed, carefully designed driveway, was gone. In its place was a steaming stretch of asphalt, a road that sliced through my property and led to absolutely nowhere. For a moment, I stood there, dumbfounded, staring at the wreckage outside. Then anger surged through me. I slammed my mug down, ignoring the hot coffee that splashed onto my hand, and stormed outside in my slippers. A group of construction workers in bright orange vests lounged around a steamroller, chatting like they hadn't just demolished my personal space. The sharp smell of fresh tar stung my nose as I marched up to the nearest worker, a wiry guy with a scruffy beard scribbling on a clipboard. "What the hell is this?" I snapped, my voice cutting through the crisp morning air. The guy barely glanced up. "HOA orders, sir," he muttered, flipping through his papers. "We're extending the road for better traffic flow." My jaw tightened so hard it hurt. This isn't a public road. This was my driveway. He finally looked at me, unfazed. "Well, it's a road now." Blood roared in my ears. "Who authorized this? Who gave you permission to rip up my property?" He shrugged. "That's an HOA thing. We just follow the work order." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down. Yelling at the crew wouldn't help. They were just pawns. The real villains were the HOA, the homeowners association that had been a thorn in everyone's side for years. They'd once fined a guy $500 for leaving his Christmas lights up past January 2nd. Now, they'd escalated from petty nonsense to outright lawbreaking. I turned and headed straight for the source of this madness, Margaret Hensley, the HOA president. Margaret had ruled the neighborhood like a tyrant for as long as anyone could remember. She was the kind of woman who probably kept binoculars by her window, waiting to catch someone breaking one of her endless rules. If anyone was behind this insanity, it was her. The short walk to her house only stoked my fury. When I got there, I jabbed her doorbell harder than necessary. She opened the door with a syrupy smile that didn't reach her eyes, dressed in a crisp navy blazer and a string of pearls. Everything about her screamed control. "Oh, Mr. Carter, what a pleasant surprise," she said, her voice oozing fake warmth. "Cut the crap, Margaret," I shot back. Why did I wake up to my driveway being paved over? Her smile didn't budge. "Oh, you must have missed the email. The board voted to extend the road for better accessibility." I narrowed my eyes. "I didn't get any email." She tilted her head, unfazed. "It went out last month. Maybe it's in your spam folder." I knew she was full of it. I never missed an HOA email, no matter how absurd. But even if I had, it didn't justify this. "You can't do this," I said, folding my arms. "That was private property." Her lips twitched into a smirk. "Actually, we can. The HOA bylaws allow us to improve shared infrastructure for the community's benefit." I scoffed. "Shared infrastructure? That was my driveway, not community property." She waved a hand dismissively. "It was outdated. The new road will improve connectivity. You'll see the value in it eventually." I stared at her, incredulous. The arrogance, the total disregard for my rights, it was maddening. "Margaret," I said, my voice low and steady, "you don't know who you're messing with. I'm a zoning commissioner." For the first time, a flicker of unease crossed her face. "I know the law, and what you've done violates property rights and zoning regulations." She forced a laugh, but it was shaky. "The board approved it, so there's nothing you can do." I smirked. "We'll see about that." Without another word, I turned and walked away, leaving her in her doorway. Back home, I dug into my zoning files. Years as a commissioner had taught me the ins and outs of property law, and I knew the HOA wasn't untouchable. I found the exact clause I needed. Private driveways were protected under easement rights. The HOA had no legal power to touch mine without my consent. Better yet, their road extension broke multiple county zoning laws. A grin spread across my face. Margaret and her cronies had underestimated me. I cracked my knuckles and started drafting a formal complaint to the county. This wasn't just about my driveway anymore. It was about shutting down their reign of terror. The next HOA meeting was going to be a showdown. I spent the day preparing, armed with every regulation and precedent I could find. The HOA had bullied homeowners for too long, and I was done letting it slide. They thought I'd grumble and give up like everyone else. They were wrong. The meeting took place in the community clubhouse, a tacky room with cheap tables and faded floral centerpieces that looked straight out of a 90s banquet hall. The fluorescent lights buzzed as residents filed in, whispering about the usual petty gripes. I sat near the front, my stack of documents in clear view. Margaret, already at the board's table, shot me a tight-lipped smile. She knew why I was there. The meeting droned on with debates about landscaping and street sign colors until I raised my hand. "I've got a concern about a recent HOA decision," I said, loud enough to silence the room. Heads turned. Margaret's smile tightened. "Of course, Mr. Carter. What's on your mind?" she asked, her tone dripping with fake politeness. I stood, holding my folder. "The unauthorized destruction of my private driveway." Whispers spread. Margaret didn't flinch. "As I've said, the board voted to extend the road for the community's benefit." I opened my folder. "Except that's illegal. County zoning laws protect private driveways under easement rights. You had no authority to touch it." The room went quiet. A few people exchanged looks. Margaret's fingers gripped her papers. "Our bylaws allow improvements to shared infrastructure," she said, forcing a chuckle. I pulled out another page. "Wrong. Your bylaws don't trump county law." And I couldn't find any record of a vote on this road expansion. It wasn't even approved properly. The board squirmed. A guy in the back spoke up. "Wait, we didn't vote on this." I turned to the crowd. "No, you didn't. And it gets worse. The county could fine the HOA thousands for this, or make them rip up the road and fix my driveway at their expense." The room buzzed with hushed chatter. Margaret's composure slipped. "This is a pattern," I pressed. "How many of you have been fined for nonsense? How many felt forced to comply with rules that aren't even legal?" A woman in front said, "They fined me $200 for unapproved flower pots." A man added, "They threatened to lean over a mailbox 2 inches too tall." The crowd was waking up. Margaret tried to regain control. "Everything we do is for the community," she said, her voice sharp. "No," I shot back. "It's for a few people who make up rules as they go." I held up my final paper. "I filed a complaint with the county. There'll be an investigation into this and other shady practices. If they're guilty, the HOA could face legal action." Margaret snapped. "You can't just report us." I raised an eyebrow. "I already have." The meeting exploded. People demanded answers, their anger boiling over. Margaret tried to shout for order, but it was useless. The homeowners weren't scared anymore. They were pissed. As chaos took over, I sat back, satisfied. This was just the start. The next morning, I felt unstoppable. The meeting had sparked a rebellion, and Margaret's grip on the neighborhood was crumbling. People were done with her petty tyranny. But I knew she'd fight back. Sure enough, a red violation notice was taped to my door, claiming my lawn was overgrown, my bird feeder unapproved, and my blinds the wrong color. I laughed. It was pathetic. She thought I'd panic, but she'd just given me more ammo. I wrote a rebuttal, tearing apart each claim with legal references. County ordinances protected my lawn, state laws backed my bird feeder, and the blinds rule wasn't even enforceable. I didn't just send it to her. I mailed it to every homeowner and board member. By noon, my phone was buzzing with neighbors laughing or asking for help with their own violations. Word spread fast. That afternoon, my neighbor Tom, a gruff retired vet, knocked on my door, waving my email. "You've started a damn uprising, kid," he said with a grin. More neighbors showed up, and soon my living room was packed. We swapped HOA horror stories, a $200 fine for a tacky garden gnome, a lien threat over a car parked an inch off center. The anger grew. "We don't have to take this," I said. "We can fight the fines and replace the board." Tom smirked. "How?" I leaned forward. "Get enough votes, and we can oust them. They're not untouchable. They're elected." The room buzzed with agreement. We'd rally signatures and expose the HOA's overreach. The next day, I printed flyers listing their worst offenses, the illegal road, bogus fines, financial mismanagement, and urged people to demand change at the next meeting. I handed them out all day, taping some to streetlights. By evening, Margaret showed up at my door, furious. You're causing panic, she hissed. The HOA keeps order, not troublemakers like you. I crossed my arms. The homeowners disagree. They're tired of your control. Her eyes blazed. This won't end well for you. I smiled. We'll see. She stormed off. Then my phone buzzed, an email from the county. My complaint was moving forward. An investigation into the road was underway. The first big blow had landed. Days later, a county inspector arrived to check the road. Neighbors watched from their porches as he measured and took notes. Margaret swooped in, all fake smiles. What a surprise. I'm sure this is a misunderstanding. The inspector didn't bite. This wasn't scheduled by the HOA. It's a homeowner complaint. Looks like you didn't have permits to alter private property. Her smile faded. We'll sort it out, she stammered. He shrugged. You'll have to, or the county will fine you, or make you undo it. She glared at me, panic in her eyes. That night, an emergency HOA meeting was called. The clubhouse was packed. Half the neighborhood showed up. Margaret tried to play it cool, rambling about community values, but the crowd wasn't having it. People demanded answers about the road and zoning violations. The room erupted, grievances pouring out. A board member finally cracked. Maybe it's time for new leadership, he said. Margaret paled. That's not necessary. But the crowd roared for a vote to replace the board. She pointed at me, furious. This is your fault. I smiled. You did this to yourself. The meeting ended in chaos, with a petition for a special election underway. Margaret was done. She just didn't know it yet. The fallout was swift. By morning, the petition had enough signatures. People were done with her scare tactics. The election was set for the next week, and when the votes were counted, Margaret and her allies were out. I got roped onto the new board. Not my plan, but I'd see it through. Margaret raged, predicting doom, but no one cared. She put her house up for sale soon after. The new HOA reversed the old board's nonsense, refunding fines, scrapping dumb rules. The county fined the HOA for the road and ordered it torn up. Watching them restore my driveway was pure victory. Tom brought beers, grinning. You stuck it to him. I nodded. Feels good. Weeks later, the county found more dirt. Years of financial mismanagement. Homeowners got refunds for old fees. At Tom's barbecue celebrating the win, I glanced at Margaret's for sale sign. She'd thought she was invincible. Now she was gone, and we'd built something better. Tom nudged me. What's next, zoning guy? I laughed. A quiet life, I hope. My driveway never looked so good.